各位长官、贵宾以及在线上收看直播的朋友，大家早安！欢迎参与2021台。
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the 2021 Taipei Food Show, International Forum on Innovative Trends in the Food Industry. Global population growth, loss of arable land, climate change have affected the production and supply of food worldwide. The United Nations predicts that the world's population will exceed 10 billion in 2050, providing nutrition for the growing world population in an environmentally friendly and efficient way, and achieving the UN Sustainable Development Goals is currently a topic of global concern. The emerging new business opportunities due to the changes in the food production industry, the interest of international brands and investors, as well as the introduction of innovative technologies, have created new opportunities and transformation of the agricultural and food industries. Therefore, the Taipei International Food Series, sponsored by Taitra, has launched the Forum on Innovative Trends in the food industry. The forum features 7 speakers from home and abroad who will talk about topics such as nutritional composition, food production, manufacturing, and packaging to provide valuable insight into the current international food trends and the latest updates from the food industry. I will now introduce the VIPs in attendance today. First, please help me welcome Director Emilia Shih, representing the exhibition department, Taitra. Next, I would like to welcome the Vice President, Mr. Huang, Food Business Great Wall Group. Next, I would like to welcome President Hsieh from Hongyang Foods. Next, let us welcome General Manager Cho, KK Orchard. Next, we would like to welcome Professor Cheng, Institute of Food Science and Technology, National Taiwan University. Next, let us invite Director Emilia Shih from the Exhibition Department Taitra to come on stage and say a few words to kickstart this morning's program. Distinguished guests, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. On behalf of Taitra, I would like to welcome you to the 2021 Taipei Food International Forum, namely the Food Taipei Forum. Before the forum began this morning, I had a quick chat with the speakers joining us today. We talked about the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic and Taiwan's achievement in fighting and containing a possible spread and outbreak of the virus. So we have been feeling quite blessed to be able to go ahead with this forum in the physical form. So we would like to welcome you to this international forum of world caliber. I would like to thank all the distinguished guests as well as speakers who have taken time out of their busy schedule to join us today. Today, we would like to introduce the topics ranging from the food production, machinery, the complete supply chain, and as well as the entire ecosystem. On the first floor of this exhibition hall, we have a booth from 28 different countries, including the Taiwan Pavilion, organized by the Council of Agriculture. This pavilion is dedicated to the display of innovative food products and local ingredients, eco-friendly diet solutions originated from Taiwan. And we also have chocolates, wines, coffee, seafood from different continents around the world on display at the forum. So we would like to cordially welcome you to take time out of your schedule to visit the various booths on display. Through this forum, we have invited a number of a stellar lineup of speakers who will be talking about the hottest topics, for example, vegetarian meat, eco-friendly diet solutions, just to name a few. The theme of this forum is Food for the Future, which echoes with what the MC had already talked about, the need to mitigate food scarcity, the adverse impact of global warming and climate change. We have invited some of the movers and shakers from the industry as our speakers today. I would like to introduce them. First, I would like to introduce the first speaker who will talk about future food industrial innovation trends, Professor Cheng from the Institute of Food Science and Technology, National Taiwan University. Mr. Hsieh from the Hongyang Foods will talk about alternative nutrition, new health proposition. We are also very honored to have Vice President Food Business Great Wall Group, Mr. Cheng Huang. He will talk about manufacturing evolution, more productivity and efficiency. In addition, we have also invited the General Manager, Mr. Jackie Cho from KK Orchard. The sweet potatoes produced by KK Orchard are available at convenience stores nationwide in Taiwan. He will talk about smart farming, new life in old fields. Apart from the local speakers, we have also invited well-known international speakers to join the forum today. They will talk about sustainable packaging as well as other important topics. They are Mr. Pierre Paslier, the co-founder and CEO of NotPla from the UK. He will talk about innovative applications, sustainable business model. We also have Mr. David Christian from Evilware joining us today. He's the co-founder of Evilware. He will talk about packaging evolution, new business model in circulation. And I also invite you to take advantage of the long breaks in between different talks, during which you can visit the various booths on display at the exhibition. Finally, I would like to wish you a Merry Christmas and a very Happy New Year. Thank you. Next, we would like to invite our invited guests to go on stage for good photo shooting. Please help us welcome Vice President Huang, Food Business Great Wall Group, President Hsieh, Hongyang Foods, General Manager Chu, KK Orchard, and Professor Chen, Institute of Food Science and Technology, National Taiwan University.
好，请所有的贵宾看中间的摄影镜头。
好，再来麻烦看我们第二台摄影机。谢谢，谢谢所有贵宾的配合，请大家回座。在这边呢，也要再次的提醒大家，我们今天论坛的资料呢，会统一公告在活动的 LINE 群。
I'd like to ask all our participants to scan the QR code, and if you have time, please can you fill in our questionnaire. Now we're going to officially begin with today's forum. We know that the rise of AI and IoT as well as big data has brought about many new opportunities for mankind. We can see that technology is changing very rapidly, as is food technology. So what are the future food trends we can expect? The first session today is going to explore this topic. We are going to be examining trends and innovations in future food. We are very pleased to invite for you Professor Cheng, who is a professor at the Institute of Food Science and Technology, National Taiwan University. Professor Cheng is very well versed in the field of food technology. Today, we are delighted to have him share his expertise with us. Now, without further ado, a very warm round of applause for Professor Cheng. Director Hsieh, distinguished guests in the food technology sector, friends online, and in the audience, good morning. I would like to thank Taitra and Business Weekly for inviting me to talk to you about some of the technological innovation trends in food. My name is Kuan-Chen. I am a professor at the Graduate Institute of Food Science and Technology and Institute of Biotechnology at National Taiwan University. I have slightly revised my presentation. I would like to share with you some of the latest technological breakthroughs. I know there are many experts in the audience, so if I am incorrect or there is any part that is insufficient, please provide me with some feedback. A little bit about myself. I am now teaching at the Graduate Institute of Food Science and Technology at National Taiwan University. We are focused on applied use of microorganism. So you can see that it's written at the bottom of the slide, some of my fields of expertise. Many people wonder what college professors are doing in their free time. In addition to teaching, we are also looking at ways in which we can execute SDGs. So you can see that I belong to quite a few NGOs and serve on these associations. In addition, I also work on the advisory board of some government departments. So this is a little background about the Institute of Biotechnology at National Taiwan University. At our lab, you can see some of the areas we are currently studying. I mentioned that microbial-organisms are at the center of all of our research. So we look at good microbiome and look at ways in which we can reuse agricultural materials. We also establish a data bank of different kinds of microorganisms. We also develop health foods. Recently, people are also looking at food that is targeted at the elderly population. We are also looking at ways in which our research can tie in with 3D printing. On the side, you see some of my colleagues. They are all researchers, and you will also see some of my grad students in my last slide. So we are a team of about 20 scholars. I'm very, very proud of my team. When we talk about future foods, we are looking at how food will develop in the future. And in the past few years, this has been a hot topic. So you can see The Economist mentioned in 2021 that over the past 13 months, food prices have been rising very rapidly, and this is because of climate change. We know that the global population is already at 8 billion. Therefore, it's very important that we look at food sufficiency. In Taiwan, we are an island. This is especially pressing. This is why we are looking at sustainable food as we cast our eyes towards the future. In addition, a scholar, Cheng from China, mentioned that the food of the future is going to be a fusion of 3 T's. FT, food technology, which is FT, which is food technology, BT, biotechnology, and IT, information technology. In addition, if you look at the Future Food Report, it mentioned that there are 50 types of foods that have a lot of potential. So President Hsieh in the audience they are looking at synthetic meat. This is definitely one of the future categories. And in the last few years, there have been many such research. In 2016, there was an article called Future Food where it provides a very comprehensive summary of future food. So if you're interested, please look up this paper. In terms of the history of food, we can see that there's always been forward-looking research when it comes to food. For example, take the case of margarine. It used to be very popular. However, then people realized that it was actually not very good for our health. But at the time, when margarine first came into the market, it had a huge demand. In the 90s, we also saw many future foods. You may be very familiar with some of them. For example, we can see seaweed was processed and then made into the bubble tea bubbles, the tapioca bubbles. And then in 2013, we can see soy products that contain all the calories you need in a day. And then in 2016, people started talking about vegan meat. This is a very, very popular topic. We know that you can use soy-based products to create vegetarian meat. And then with biotechnology, you can actually make vegetarian meat look very close to real meat. Recently, there's also been a lot of reporting about vegetarian eggs, where you can also taste egg that is vegetarian but tastes exactly like regular egg. In addition, precision agriculture, precision medicine are fields where AI is applied, where we can customize nutrition. So with an eye on artificial intelligence, you can look at the different kinds of future food categories. If you look at keywords, when you put the word future food categories in Google, you will see seaweed, you will see cactus, you will see sprouts. You also look at tubers. And what I really want to highlight here is insect protein. This is something that people have talked about in the past. However, there have been some concerns on the regulatory side, yet it's still gaining more and more prominence. I talked about so many different future food categories. I would like to focus on a few of them. I believe that they are going to become very popular. The first one that I want to introduce is one that you've probably heard of online, and that is moringa. We know that the leaves of moringa trees can be ground into powder and made into smoothies, soups, teas, and seasonings. This is a plant that is native to South Asia. It grows very quickly and is drought resistant. And the leaves can be picked 7 times a year. It's rich in vitamins A and C, as well as calcium and potassium. People can take it to make pancakes. And in the Philippines and Indonesia, the bean clips of the moringa tree are often used to make curry and soup seasonings. So today, people are not just concerned about eating for the sake of being full. People care about the health profile. Therefore, for moringa trees, it can also be made into medicinal herbs, which have the potential to cure diseases. Another food I'd like to highlight is wakame. Wakame is also called robo or kelp buds. And in Japan, there has been a very rich history in cultivating wakame. And now countries such as France, New Zealand, Argentina have also begun to cultivate it. Wakame is rich in omega-3 fatty acids. This is very beneficial to the human body. And another food category people are talking about is fonio. This is an ancient African grain. It's a little bit like couscous. And in ancient Egypt, Egyptians had been cultivating fonio for 5,000 years. It is drought resistant and matures in about 60 or 70 days. Compared with other grains, it actually matures very quickly. It contains iron and magnesium, can be eaten like rice, and can also be used to brew beer. So beer has had a very long history. Many missionaries actually drink beer during Lent. Another benefit of fonio is gluten-free. We know that for a lot of labeling for food, people are looking for gluten-free products. In Asia, this may not be as popular, but actually in the West, many people are looking for gluten-free products so that they are less susceptible to allergies. Another food product I'd like to talk about is Nopalus cactus. This is rich in fiber and saponins, and it is a common food in the Mexican diet. It can also be cooked and made into jams or juices. So the dietary fiber in Nopalus cactus can help the body metabolize fat. So it has the effect of lowering blood sugar and relieving discomfort from hangover. A while back, I talked about insect protein. And right now, when it comes to insect protein, we know that there are 140 countries and 3,000 ethnic groups that have a tradition of eating insects. When you visit certain remote regions in Taiwan, the Aboriginals will tell you that they have a tradition of eating insects as well. So you can actually get your protein from insects. And in Yunnan, China, as well as other regions, the larva and pupa of hornets are eaten as food. In Taiwan, we also put hornets in alcohol and drink that alcohol. In addition, we can see in Chinese culture, we also have certain kinds of insects that we consume. So insect shortbread, insect chocolate, insect lollipops are all going to be possible food categories in the area of insect protein. A group called Forward Fooding will compare different food technologies and come up with a ranking called Food Tech 500. And you can see here that it covers areas such as vertical farming, innovative packaging, as well as insect food. This slide has to do with the top 10 food technology and the countries of origin. You will see that their products are very closely tied to what I've just explained. For example, they are either relevant to SDG goals or they shoulder corporate social responsibility. We know that one of the SDG goals is zero hunger. So if you look at the first one on the list, Aero Farms, they are definitely coinciding with the goal of zero hunger through their products. I also want to introduce some legislation for food to you. One of my colleagues wrote a paper where he talked about how many of the future foodstuffs are not regulated because they use different kinds of ingredients and materials. Therefore, for producers, it's very, very important for them to see this new environment. And when we look at food materials, you can divide them into traditional and non-traditional. The most important thing, of course, is to look at food safety. If something has been used for over 25 years, it's considered traditional food material. It doesn't matter even if we're talking about processed food. It is easier for you to receive accreditation if you are a traditional food material. However, if you fall into the category of non-traditional, for example, Maybe it's a traditional foodstuff somewhere in Africa. They've used it for a long time. But in Taiwan, it's considered quite innovative. Then you still have a very laborious process of applying for accreditation.
And the Health Ministry also has established related laws and regulations regarding GMO foods. Here is the latest terms and regulations. For example, the metabolites of GMO foods, if the metabolites are also contained in the final product, it is still considered to be a GMO product. Here, we would like to emphasize the importance of a legislation for foods because the food industry is a relatively stable industry and the food safety is of paramount concern for all the stakeholders involved. So for the food suppliers, we have to take into consideration the following factors. For example, food industry has some inherent characteristics very different from the pharmaceutical industry. For example, when a product needs to be launched in the pharmaceutical company, it has to be expedited to go through the different various clinical stages and testing stages. However, the food industry is a relatively stable industry, and innovation must also take into account food safety issues. We also need to take into account consumers' levels of acceptance and the commodity rotation speed. For example, many of the food items we see in the local convenience stores are being rotated and being changed, have different shelf occupancy periods based on the actual market needs. And industrial transformation upgrading also is quite necessary. The upgrading of the infrastructure, the training of the labor force, and even to the corporate culture, whether those in the management positions have an open mind and are open to upgrading the plants or the company. These are all very important factors. We also need to look into the different company sizes. Many, for example, food regulations, branch licenses, the differences in these different types of licenses apply to companies and plants of different sizes. For example, HACCP, ISO 22000, GMP, CNS are very common certifications among Taiwanese companies. And for the consumers, they often take into consideration food safety. Sometimes they also look into the food price points. They give a lot of thoughts to how to balance food safety needs and the price point. The consumers also often look into the health claims, whether the food offers any health benefits. They also pay a lot of attention to the food scares, scandals, and some of the food trends. For example, the consumption of rabbit as an alternative meat, a protein source. It has been a topical issue in the local news. People have the herd mentality. They may have a knee-jerk reaction whenever they hear about a food scandal. They worry too much about it. So people will need to be given enough information to make an informed decision about what food to purchase and to opt for. Here is a list of some of the terms in the Food Safety and Hygiene Management Act of Taiwan. For example, the food shall not contain any harmful or hazardous ingredients. The food shall not cause any harms or injuries to the human health. So these all lay down the basic foundation for the management of the food industry. So we often think about what the future trends are in terms of enhancing the satiation of the food ingestion and also the nutritional content and composition of the food ingredients. And these are exactly the focus of the lab which I oversee, the Applied and Food Microbiology Lab at the National Taiwan University. For example, we look into the next generation of gene editing, vision health, vision care, NI precision health, sustainable green energy, just to name a few. Like I had already mentioned, we have been working on creating DNA fingerprinting technology to be able to enable microbial level, molecular level kind of identification and inspection, which can be applied to the food and pharmaceutical company. We have already selected potential microbial candidates to establish the DNA fingerprinting technology-enabled mapping so that too we can identify these potential microbial organisms for future use. I would also like to talk about the significance, the importance of vision care in the age of metaverse. A lot of parents are worried about their kids being nearsighted. I have 2 daughters. They're always playing on my cell phone, and many kids are wearing glasses already at a very young age in Taiwan. So with the rise of the metaverse, you have blue light shining to your eyes on a daily basis as you live or carry out your daily life in the metaverse. Therefore, it is very important to develop an intracellular oxidation pressure that relieves the retinal photoreceptor-related cells caused by light sensitivity. So this is one research direction we are focusing on. Next, I would like to talk about another novel technology, which is biotechnology-based green technology. When you talk about renewable technology, you think of the wind, the solar energy. However, the main focus of our lab is to use organic matter to produce biomass energy through natural and chemical reactions. We use agricultural refuse and agricultural waste materials as the basis to produce biomass energy through natural or chemical reactions in order to achieve the goal of using green technology in food production. We also look into 3D biocomposites. What we do is that we use it to make nutrient-dense artificial food, reduce food security problem, reduce food waste to produce vegetarian meat, artificial meat. You have all heard about the 3D printed steak, textured artificial and vegetarian meat. So this is another research direction of ours. Another focus of our lab is the AI precision health. This means to apply AI big data to optimize biosynthetic compound yields, use deep learning software to construct small molecule protein compounds, to create IPA biopath analysis to provide personalized prevention and healthcare assessment systems. We also research next-generation gene editing, which focuses on biosynthesis, engineering technology to increase the yield of the target product by programming microbial synthesis pathways in our bodies. In conclusion, when considering food of the future, the major trend is as follows. For example, there will be increasing scrutiny to achieve better food safety. And the major trend is to end hunger, promote nutrition, and enhance health. And the government should establish related regulations as early as possible. And the future research directions include food synthesis biology, food big data, food sensory perception science, and smart manufacturing. The industry, the government, academia, and research institutes should work together to create a win-win solution for all stakeholders. I've been teaching at the National Taiwan University for about 11 years. I would like to thank my colleagues and some of the collaborative partners, for example, ITRI, the Ministry of Technology, the Ministry of Health and Welfare, the Council of Agriculture, for their continued support and collaboration with my lab. And I would also like to give my special thanks to these collaborators and researchers who are currently working in our lab. For example, Professor Dr. Ke, who graduated from our lab, has just launched his new startup company called Agali. Some of you might have already heard of it. So I would like to give my special thanks to all these collaborators who have made this presentation possible. With that, I conclude my presentation today. Thank you, Professor Cheng, for your most informative and engaging presentation. Please return to your seat. With the rapid growth of the global population and economy, the traditional meat supply may not be able to meet the growing demand in the future. In recent years, artificial meat has become increasingly popular, and many companies have tried to develop artificial meat that is similar to real meat in terms of texture and taste. Hongyang Foods is a professional manufacturer of various textured meat products with more than 20 years of experience in R&D of plant-based protein products. At present, Hongyang Foods is working with Miski, a sales channel agent, to distribute its plant meat products to Costco and various other convenience stores, including PX Mart. Now let's welcome him. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to welcome you to the forum. Today, I would like to talk about the future trends in vegetarian meat development. Why did I choose this as the topic of my presentation today? I would like to thank Bill Gates for starting the trend for mentioning the future importance of vegetarian meat around the world. Now let's look at the increase of per capita meat consumption around the world. In China, before 2000, the per capita meat consumption was less than 1 kilograms. 20 years down the road, it has risen to 50 kilograms per capita per month. As people's GDP continues to increase, their per capita meat consumption also has risen. We all have heard of the potential health risks of consuming red meats. Red meats could have potential implications on our health. It is also less eco-friendly. Now let's look at the fact that 26% of the greenhouse gases are in fact generated by the food industry, particularly the husbandry and animal raising industry. Half of them, precisely 58% of them, of the greenhouse gases emitted by the food industry, in fact, came from animal products. And it takes 1 hectare of land to feed 1 cow. However, grains grown on 1 hectare of land can feed 19 people. So how do we release land from the husbandry industry in order to feed more people is a pressing issue.
If a person stops consuming animal products for a month, this is how much you can reduce: 281 kilograms of carbon dioxide emissions, as well as 126,702 liters of water. Of course, I'm not saying we should completely cut out meat. For a balanced diet, we can still consume a little meat. Some people think that being completely vegetarian is not healthy, but look at some of the Buddhist monks. They're able to live past 100. They are strictly vegetarian. So that's something to consider. If we look at global statistics, you can see from 2019 to 2020, the amount of people who are now consuming vegetarian meat has been very, very rapid. If you take Taiwan, we can see from 2020 to 2021, the number has doubled. The percentage may be slightly slower abroad, but in Taiwan, there's very robust growth. So today, people are eating vegetarian meat not because of religious beliefs. There are, of course, a small group that eat vegetarian meat because of religious reasons, but most of the people care about the environment and clean water. We want to make sure that there are enough natural resources for future generations. So more and more people are actually turning to vegetarian meat. I'd like to play a film clip for you here. This film clip talks about the taste of vegetarian meat. For these vegetarian hamburger steaks, we often will add beetroot so that we can have the red color people usually associate with normal regular meat. The nutritional value of vegetarian meat is also very, very high. And the Asian market is one of the fastest growing markets in the area of vegetarian meat. So you can see that this is a very attractive industry. However, we need to first trace the evolution of the vegetarian food industry in Taiwan. I have been in this business for 26 years. So since 1996, I think I was one of the first producers of vegetarian meat. And I remember at the time we had our own homegrown technology. We had to work with gluten, tofu skins, as well as shiitake mushroom stems, and use that as the main ingredient for processing. In the 1980s, I remember having access to tofu skins was already quite a luxury. Most of the people who were vegetarians at the time were vegetarians for religious reasons. And then in the 1990s, a very important product came to the market. This product can be said to the beginning of vegetarian meat. It is called MBP ham. It is 400 NT for one. It is the first time where they used textured soy protein and turned it into vegetarian meat. Of course, if you had to taste it now, you probably find it hard to swallow. It wasn't very tasty. Through processing, textured soy protein was able to be turned into vegetarian meat. Here you can see a snack called vegan jerky. I developed this when I was 26 years old. I like to innovate and tap into unexplored areas. So at first, we just used some flour to make certain snacks, but then we realized that you could actually take textured soy and turn it into vegan jerky. These are mass produced and you can find them on the market. What we're trying to do at Hongyang is we want to make sure that the texture is good, that the meat is tasty. So rather than talk about generation 1 or generation 2, what we focused on is how to turn textured soy protein into lifelike meat. We now have 32 different flavors. You can look at hamburgers, sausages, ham, hot dogs. That's all meat that comes from pork. Through processing and through changing the structure and the fiber of the pork, it can be turned into products such as hamburger, hot dog, ham. But we know that even though they taste different, they are all made from pork. Now, if we're talking about vegetarian material, you need to have different kinds of ingredients to allow for different textures of vegetarian meat. For example, chicken nuggets probably requires 2 different kinds of soy ingredients. So Hongyang has researched this for 26 years in order to come up with the right texture. So this is our competitive advantage. And we hope that our products, if we're talking about dumplings, as soon as you bite into them, it feels just like the real thing. We have a very famous snack under our brand, which is a fried dumpling. And it's endorsed by a celebrity. It is very popular now. People are queuing up to buy this. You have to know that when you bite into this dumpling, it tastes exactly like the real thing. Just talking about vegetarian meat is insufficient. You really need to show that it can measure up to the real thing. I want to talk a little bit about the application side of plant protein. When we're looking at soybean, pea, or wheat, we don't even need to talk about the fact that gluten can cause allergies. Soybean, pea, and wheat, they give you different textures. So you need to have the right kind of combination as well as proportion to get the right texture. Today, if we wanted to make a beef roll, we know Costco has very tasty beef rolls. If you are going to make a vegetarian version, it really needs to measure up to the real beef roll. How do you achieve that? You need to get the combination of soybean, pea, and wheat right so that it tastes very similar to the original. So this is what we strive to do at Hongyang. We know that we take soy and then we flatten and de-oil it and then ground it into soy meal. And we usually use shears as well as high heat to change the protein links. We're able to create new protein links that become vegetarian meat. Plant meat is the same as vegetarian meat. It is just a different term, but it's referring to the same thing. So originally we started, and nobody was paying attention to us, but thanks to Bill Gates, we are now very, very popular. So here you can see the extrusion equipment that we use, where we're able to take soy meal, wheat meal, pea meal, and then through high temperature heating, we have our final vegetarian meat. And you only need 30 seconds to do this conversion. This is quite miraculous. One of our biggest customers in 1999, they were interested in slow food. They wanted to promote the idea of healthy eating. So they approached me and wanted to see whether I could work with them. They mentioned that they didn't want any chemical additives in their processed products. Very often, that means the product is not tasty, even though very healthy, because, as I said, they don't have any chemical additives in their product. So I shared our recipe for vegetarian meat with them, and they were astonished with our recipe. We are very, very open about our process of manufacturing. From beginning to end, we want to make sure that the final food product tastes the same as the real thing. So for us, it is more the chemical properties of the food product and how to convert it into the same texture as real meat. Here you can see different types of plant meat products. We have nuggets, we have hot dogs, we have ham. In terms of application, what we do first is we first soak the vegetarian meat, and then we put it in a dehydrator, and then we begin with emulsifying. Emulsifying is important. I'm sure many of you are aware. You take water, oil, and protein, and you mix it together into an emulsified slurry. After that, we have a pulp forming process where the vegetarian meat is turned into a vegetarian pulp. And then through the vacuum mixer, you're able to combine the vegetarian meat, the seasoning, and emulsions. And at the same time, you can also remove air from your mixture. Of course, it's different if we're looking at jerky. I have jerky that you can try here in the audience. We are probably the biggest jerky producer in the world, not just in Taiwan. Our vegetarian jerky is sold all over the world. And the growth of our vegetarian jerky is huge. You can taste it. It's not 100% like beef jerky, but it's very, very similar. The most important thing is vegetarian food has to be tasty. Otherwise, people won't taste it or won't buy it. Here you can see how we are turning and cooking our vegetarian jerky. No hand touches the foodstuff. Everything is automated. And all the way till packaging, you will see that no hand will touch our vegetarian jerky. I want to tell you a secret. We actually first knew how to make vegetarian jerky before we knew how to make vegetarian meat. So food safety, as you can see, is paramount to Hongyang. We do not have any physical contact with our foodstuff. It is only when they're in vacuum bags that you can touch the package. When we talk about vegetarian products, I can tell you anything that you can mention that is related to vegetarian meat, we can make them. Of course, sometimes there are some very, very niche products. I can share a little bit of our history. We've been in this industry for 26 years. So some people want to know, have you made abalone? Have you made that kind of shellfish texture? Is it possible to create a similar texture and taste? We put a lot of effort into developing the machinery, and we've thought it was impossible to create the texture of abalone and shellfish. Later, I invited some of these customers to a meal, and as we were eating, an idea came to me. I realized that actually you can create the texture by using something very basic that we have in the kitchen. And once you cook the vegetarian abalone, it will then have the same texture as the real abalone. However, it is probably more expensive to make than the real abalone. But that just shows you that we are able to do everything. Also, gyoza is something that uses a lot of vegetarian meat. Here you can see vegan jerky. I mentioned that you can try our product. You can sample it. And at Carrefour, it is actually, you can buy it. It's very popular. Also, at PX Mart, And Costco, our Vivit, is a very, very popular brand of vegetarian meat.
比较好的是英国跟澳。
We also export our products to the UK and Australia. The vegetarian meat jerkies are very popular in those countries. You could see our products in almost all the major supermarkets in these two export markets. And we have seen a major growth in the sales of the vegetarian meat products in Taiwan. By working with the local convenience stores, we have been launching a wide range of products, such as vegetarian burger patties, vegetarian fried pork cutlet in a meal box. Whenever you bite into the vegetarian meat patty, you don't feel like you're eating fake meat. You feel like you're eating plant-based protein, a high-quality meat patty that is made from high-quality plant sources. We have also developed vegetarian meat fillings for Chinese dumplings, the original flavor, kimchi flavor, and the hot chili pepper flavor. We also have worked with the local pizza restaurants. We have come out with vegetarian meatballs and meat toppings for pizzas, just to name a few. Barbecue meats, vegetarian braised pork chops are only some of the products we have developed recently. We have recently developed a vegetarian tuna that can be used in a variety of recipes, such as tuna salads. It could be wrapped inside of an onigiri, rice balls and sandwiches, and vegetarian meat floss is also a very popular product of ours. It could be wrapped again inside of rice balls and be used as topping on white rice. We also have come up with ready-to-eat these small packets of ready-to-eat vegetarian meat selections, vegetarian nuggets, vegetarian fried meatballs, just to name a few. In addition, we have recently come up with this new line of nutritional bars. I have lived in Yunlin for my entire lifetime. I spent my entire life in my hometown, with the exception of 2 years when I had to go away to other cities to carry out my military service. Growing up in the Yunlin County, I am very accustomed to the beautiful rural landscape where there are a lot of farms. Farmers grow grains. So I thought that would be a great ingredient to take advantage of. Yunlin is also a #1 county in terms of its production of garlic. There, the local farmers would often work with migrant workers to harvest the grains and the fresh vegetables. And we work with these Yunlin-based farmers through annual contracts in order to source locally. So the farmers would work with the migrant workers to harvest the fresh ingredients, and then the ingredients would be sent to our plants. Their weight would be measured, and then to get ready for the next stage of processing. We source our brown rice from the Yunlin farmers, and the brown rice and the multigrains, all grown locally in Taiwan, make up the main ingredients of our nutritional bar. The GI value is as low as 48. In the exhibitions and food expos we have attended around the world, these grain bars have been very, very popular and have attracted the attention of many potential buyers. So we see that there's great market potential out there. We are not just really focusing on vegetarian meat. We are in the food business at the end of the day. Not so long ago, a Xiaomai restaurant owner talked to me about the possibility of using vegetarian meat to substitute real meat in his dumplings and xiaomais. After having a half-an-hour conversation with me, he was confident enough to go back to his restaurant and launched a new items on vegetarian items on his menus. So the ingredients of the vegetarian meat can be very, very applicable, and there is huge market potential out there. With that, I conclude my presentation. Thank you very much. Hongyang Foods will be offering everyone a sample of the vegetarian meat jerkies, and each and every one of you in attendance today will receive a packet of the vegetarian jerky. Now, we would like to move on to the next presentation. More and more people today choose to eat out, and that coupled with the pandemic that drives the food delivery industry. The garbage generated from disposable food packaging is the main source of environmental pollution. So, what new technologies do we have that can make food packaging more eco-friendly? For the third presentation this morning, we have Pierre Passler, the co-founder and CEO of Natpla. He will talk about innovative application, sustainable business model.
And thanks to Taitra to make this happen and to invite me to share a little bit of our story. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about how we use seaweed and plants to make sustainable packaging. So I co-founded Natpla a few years back with my co-founder Rodrigo with this idea that we could make packaging that disappears naturally without leaving any traces in the environment. We were really frustrated with the typical single-use plastic that you find all around us. It's now kind of like one of the most recognizable type of waste. This small one-use type of content, and the saddest thing is that the consumption of these has been going through the roof in the past 40 years, and because of the very small amount of material used in those packaging, it's very hard to get any sort of value out of like a secondary life, like recycling. So this has left us with a true problem in terms of pollution in the environment. Some of those single-use plastic can take up to 700 years to break down in the environment. They slowly release all sorts of additives that can be like toxic to human health and to biodiversity. And we're starting to see the beginning of the health implications for humans as well. So we really are kind of like dealing with a time bomb here. And we have to find a way to reduce the amount we put out that eventually makes it into the environment. So that's why we created this. This is Oho. This is a little kind of like sachet or bubble that can contain water or different liquids. And unlike any other packaging, it's actually edible. So you can literally eat the whole thing. And that's the fastest way to make it disappear. And it's made from seaweed. So we've been using seaweed as an alternative to plastic. Especially, for example, here in this case, brown seaweed that is like a type of organism that grows very fast, very, very abundant. Some of the seaweed that we have been using grows up to 1 meter per day. So it's just one of the fastest growing organisms on the planet. And what's quite incredible with seaweed is that, first of all, it doesn't require any input to grow. It doesn't require fresh water or fertilizers. It doesn't compete with like food crops and land use. And on top of that, this is how oceans sequester carbon. They take the carbon from the water into the growing seaweed. And so it's an active carbon sink. And on top of that, potentially it can have a pretty good role to play in disposable packaging that doesn't create a long-lasting waste. So you can see here, this is a little kind of like test that we have set up in our lab to make sure that when we create packaging, it naturally biodegrades without requiring any special conditions. So you've seen that like the nut plat material breaks down in about 10 days, even faster than an orange peel. And what's really interesting about biodegradability is that it's a real spectrum. It's not black or white. It's not one certification says yes, one says no. It's really just like how hard it is for nature to break it down. And in the case of things that like naturally biodegrade, like in this case without any industrial composting or any kind of like man-made kind of like activities, it's really important to keep the materials as natural as possible. So for example, here you can see that the cardboard in this video typically is full of additives that are synthetic. So even if cardboard and cellulose is easy for nature to recycle into nutrients and soil, when we add too much kind of like additives, synthetic additives, then microorganisms find it way less easy to break down. So that's one of the things that is really important, is to remember that biodegradability is really like a range, and it's not just an absolute. And on the left side, you can see that PLA, this bioplastic that is made from natural resources, but then is like synthesized from a natural resource like cornstarch. It doesn't break down at all. It's something that requires industrial composting with high temperature that don't exist in the environment. And so left in the environment, it's just like a piece of plastic. It's just gonna stay around for a very long time. So when we started this, we were kind of like trying to replicate nature. The idea was that if things work well in the natural environment, that's really where we should take our inspiration from. And what's really interesting with membranes, like for example in the egg yolk, is that they work really well in traction, but not so much in compression. So materials that are efficient in traction are like really interesting because the content gives them the resistance. And as I mentioned, I think like seaweed is a really under kind of like used and understudied resource for packaging. We're really excited to see that there is like a lot of other companies that are starting to really consider shifting some of the synthetic use towards seaweed. There's lots of different types of seaweed with different properties, and essentially it's about finding in nature the things that work best and combining them and blending them. Our team of chemists is always looking at how we can make the best out of what nature already makes. Seaweed has been around for 100 million years, so it's really safe and it exists in large amounts. So it's really safe in the environment to release seaweed in any place. A vast range of bacteria and microorganisms have evolved over millions of years to know how to process it, unlike a lot of synthetic materials that have been created over the past 50 years that nature has never seen and doesn't know how to handle. So we've been kind of like exploring how we could repackage different types of products with our little packaging. And we kind of realized that just like a fruit, it has certain limitations. It's not something that lasts for a very long time. It's not like plastic, something that can be kind of like kept on shelf for years and years. So we try to find applications where we are a lot closer to fruit and vegetables than we are to kind of like industrial containers. So one of the first applications that we looked at is the running events. So we've been using OHO, the name of our product, at like races and marathons where we provide either water or sometimes energy drinks as well, like this, to essentially like make sure that the runners are staying hydrated and that no plastic is used. And at the last London Marathon, we distributed 36,000 units so that we could replace that many cups and bottles. And it was really great to see that at our station, there was no plastic on the floor. There was no kind of like waste. It was the easiest station to clean, and all of the runners were still hydrated and happy to continue running. The second application that we've been using is for takeaway ketchup and mayo sachets for delivery. And so we're doing these little kind of like sachets as a replacement for typical laminates. And in this case, again, like there is this short consumption cycle, especially when you get delivery or you're eating in like on a like fast food restaurant. So the product doesn't have to last a very, very long time. It really kind of like fits well this more natural, you know, like fruit-like packaging. And so we've been partnering with a company called Just Eat that like serves like takeaway food in Europe, and we've been really using their network to basically show that we can use something different than plastic and aluminum foil stuck together to develop an alternative. And so we've been sending to their partner restaurants thousands of sachets over the months. And the great thing is that at the end of the day, this can be thrown away just like any food waste. So the best is to compost it, but it essentially is just like food waste. It will not last for hundreds of years, and it will quietly disappear within, we estimate, between 4 and 6 weeks on average. So it really is something that like people can feel not guilty of like creating like the need for packaging, because it's not going to have a bad impact on the environment. And we've also been using our bubbles for like sampling and for drinks, especially because we can really use the interesting kind of like property of being edible. So this is a like campaign we've done with Glenlivet for a whiskey cocktail. And what was really interesting is the reaction of people when you put this in your mouth and you pop it. It's definitely something that is quite funny to watch. And so we've partnered with a very great cocktail company in London to develop a range of whiskey-based cocktails. And these little bubbles like can literally just pop in your mouth, and then you can eat the packaging, so it's completely gone. And so that was also a really interesting application. Here you can see a little bit more about our manufacturing process with the machine that we've developed. And yeah, so you can get your drink without any need for disposable packaging that is using plastic. So we've been developing like both the material and the machinery, and we had to create this ourselves because there was no machine that could process our seaweed using our patented method. And the concept of this machine has been to use local manufacturing, so smaller machine that produce smaller quantities rather than like a giant factory that produces for the whole continent or the whole world. And that works really well with the short shelf life of our content. So this more localized production means that we can have less transportation, and in turn, between the material and the machine, we can have a reduced environmental impact as well in terms of carbon footprint, and obviously zero plastic and zero fossil fuel like carbon used and released in that case. So a little insight on how we got started. I met my co-founder Rodrigo a few years back during our studies in London. And we literally just started in our kitchen. We had this frustration with single-use plastic, and we just decided to look at how we could test different natural materials on our own. And we would essentially invite some friends over, go to the shop, and try to repackage everything and see what would work, what would not work. And some things were terrible fails, but a few others were interesting. And to our surprise, when we started to develop like a better kind of like version of our prototypes, and we shared it online on like YouTube and Facebook, we started to get a lot of people replicating our process with the instructions that we had shared with the internet. So this is one of the major shows in Japan, and this is in Germany, like in the US. everyone was really kind of like excited about the potential of this new material. And that was a great way to get a lot of people paying attention to packaging and raising awareness about how packaging is not as natural as we want it to be. So after that, we joined an incubator called Climate Kick when we graduated that essentially like supports startups that are doing something about like climate change or pollution. And they gave us the very first grant and the very first like starting point for doing this as a business. And we joined forces with the chemistry department of Imperial College, where we had a few like colleagues that were kind of like helping us at the end of their PhD, or some students that were available to start working on some of the properties. We got a few grants and a few awards. Not all of them. You can see Rodrigo's face of disappointment, losing €500,000 to this other startup. But we definitely got a lot of support, and it was like the way we funded ourselves in the first days. And then in 2017, we did a crowdfunding campaign, which allowed us to raise £850,000 from 900 investors all around the world. It was really great because we had lots of people like who were believing in what we were doing that could help us fund this in any way they could, from like £10 to £10,000. So it was really, really democratic way of getting funding. And that also got us a huge amount of social media visibility, which is very useful for a startup like us. So you can see some of the videos getting 90 million views. So it was just like very viral. And I think the fact that packaging was edible was something that really caught people's attention, and that people were kind of like seeing as being so much more natural than everything else that they had found. So thanks to this raise, we were able to get our first space. At the beginning was quite empty, but very quickly we filled it up with lots of equipment, and like started like developing things a little bit more advanced, get the team working together across chemistry, engineering, design, production, commercial. And you can see we started developing more machines and more kind of like advanced solutions. And actually the most recent kind of like office is this one with 10,000 square feet. So a lot bigger space for our chemistry lab, for our different operations. And just a like highlight of some of the team members, but actually like now we are 45. So this slide is definitely a few months back. Always working on the properties to improve what we can do with seaweed and plants, but obviously respecting nature. So we never try to push nature beyond what it's capable of doing at end of life as well. So if we try to boost the shelf life of our products, we want to make sure that we don't lose the biodegradability in the end. And it's finding the sweet spot between something that is functional, but at the same time that like doesn't kind of like become unknown for nature. That's really where we operate. We've had like the opportunity to challenging the status quo with decision makers. This is the French president. We've also been able to kind of like explain that it's not about recycling, or it's not all about recycling, or it's not all about deposit schemes. It's not all about bans. We need a lot of different solutions working together to try to address this problem. We need to work in conjunction of every other solution, because if you look at nature, every fruit is different. Every tree bears a different type of fruit and of different qualities and different properties. So nature is really good at like being plural in solutions rather than like singular. And the problem with plastic is that we've been using it everywhere for like any application, indiscriminate of if it's one place or another. So we need to bring back this plurality in solutions. We've been like growing since with the support of a few other impact VC funds. So back in 2019, we did a seed round with a few other funds that support us, Lupa System, Arsenal Ventures that has supported insect proteins or vertical farming, Sky Ocean Ventures that support a lot of startups focused on the plastic pollution problem. So it's been great to get some support from other funds. We've been also kind of bringing our product to different places. So this is Selfridges in London. As I explained, we now have kind of found a lot of great alignment with the running event community that really cares about reducing its consumption of plastic and these big events. Here you can see this is the London Marathon, where we provided the hydration in one water station to 40,000 runners, and bringing it to gyms as well, to bars. So lots of different places where there is opportunities to reduce plastic. I think this is a little kind of insight in how we produce, for example, the ketchup sachets with our machine, and bring it with the restaurant owners, who are also very keen to do their part and bring more sustainable alternatives to their customers. Following the development of our first product, we realized that there were other applications for our technology, and there was also the ambition with Notpla to have a catalog of different solutions, because people need solutions for each one of their needs if they want to switch away from plastic. So we started working on a range of other applications, one of which is a coating that we apply onto cardboard to make it more resistant to food and grease and moisture. So you can see that with our coating, the cardboard is resisting the food, whereas with the part that is not coated, it immediately soaks the food. And so we started developing a box out of a cardboard coated with our material, which we have also been kind of launching with Just Eat. And now we are growing our manufacturing capacity to serve different markets with our boxes. We're quite excited because for this particular application, we make the cardboard coated in reels or in sheets, and then they can be turned into any shape of box. So we are working with now converters who serve any client they have with any shape they need. So it's a great way to also have a lot of impact quickly through the work we're doing with these converters. And we also started to develop a film, a heat sealable film that is essentially kind of a replacement for traditional transparent flexible packaging. And what's really interesting about this is that we can also kind of make it into rolls and fit in the existing types of machinery for sealing plastic. And so we've been developing a lot of different formulations so that we can reach the kind of properties that are needed for this kind of application. And we're doing things like these little sachets, mainly focusing at the moment on dry products, because this film doesn't have very high barrier properties that sometimes are required for certain types of food. But for a lot of products, actually, you don't really need very high barrier properties. You need the packaging to just group things and transport things. One of the interesting things is that we can make this packaging soluble or insoluble. So for example, we can replace the PVOH that is used for this kind of detergent capsule that is made from petrol, and we can replace it with an alternative that is natural. So we've been doing detergent sachets that are also soluble in water that are not made from petrol, and using this solubility as a bit of an opportunity. So for example, we've been doing sachet portions of spaghetti that you can throw directly with the packaging into the boiling water, and it will just dissolve, and you can just eat the pasta straight out without having to throw away anything. And we've even done versions where we add a bit of salt or a bit of spices to the film, so that when you cook it, it goes into the pasta. So lots of creative opportunities to make packaging a little bit more interesting and also to challenge a bit what we expect from plastic, because we don't want to be just substituting from plastic to another material, but we want to rethink what packaging can be. This is for seeds, and this is for fruit and veg. So lots of different opportunities to challenge the current use of packaging. And we think that there's even other areas where we could enter. For example, for fashion with the poly bags, there is a lot of use of single-use plastic, which can be probably prevented by using more natural materials like seaweed or like other plant materials. So this is only the beginning. We're quite excited to see where we're going to be able to bring this as we scale up. And we think that seaweed has a big role to play. It's not going to replace plastic everywhere, because no material can replace plastic everywhere. But we think that it has a pretty good role to play for things that need to be used for a short amount of time and then needs to degrade very quickly as well. Thank you. And this is how you can get in touch with us on notpla.com or find us on social. We post some really interesting content related with single-use packaging and seaweed. And don't hesitate to reach out and have a conversation. We're always happy to share where we're at on the journey and see if there's synergies and we can do things together. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much to Mr. Passelier. 我们再次的谢谢。
Once again, we'd like to thank the co-founder of NATPLA, Pierre, for his presentation. He has changed our notion of packaging. Once again, we'd like to thank our three speakers for their excellent presentations. This concludes our morning sessions. Thank you very much for your participation. Once again, I'd like to invite you to fill in our online questionnaire. We value your feedback. We will come back at 1:30 in the afternoon. You can come into the room at around 1 p.m. So please remember your belongings.
协助您保管，谢谢大家。
Thank you. See you at 1:30 this afternoon.